The Gemara says it's someone who never lies except on 3 occasions. He'll lie if they ask him, "Did you learn this?" And he won't admit that he learned something. And Tosfos, of course, says that it says Vishinantam. The Gemara teaches us that whenever a Talmid Chacham is asked something, you should be able to answer immediately without any delay or stuttering. So Tosfos, yes, that's if someone's asking you a shaila, you have to answer him properly. But if someone just asks you, "Do you know this?" that's a place to be humble and to not say you know it. Before you was in Yonit Tznius, if they asked him, he had relations last night. If he asked what's in a mikveh, he shouldn't say anything. For instance, let's say he didn't come to yeshiva one day because he was makbid on Tekanos Ezra, and therefore he couldn't come. He shouldn't say when they ask him why he didn't come because of that. He should say because he was busy, because the train had a flat tire on the way over. And the third thing is bushpiza, a person, if he has a wonderful host, he stayed somewhere, he shouldn't tell people that this was a wonderful place to stay, because then all of the people are going to want to stay by this guy, and they'll put him out of house and home. And of course, that's only if it's people who aren't appropriate, but if it's people who wouldn't do that, then you don't have to worry. That's what Tosfos speaks out. It's dafka if it's been the adam she'enan mehuganim, that's when you shouldn't tell them because they're going to swarm this person's house. But if it's anoshim mehuganim, if they're normal people, it's not going to happen. We don't have to worry. They're going to storm this guy's house. And then we learned how Mar Zutra was able to point out who the ganav of the keli was in the shpiza because he saw someone wipe their hands in this fringe jacket, which indicated that they don't have respect for other people's money. Which takes us now to the 10th line from the top, the 9th line from the top on Daf Chav Daled Amud Aleph. Tanya we learned. Umayda, the Bach 6 and above, Umayda Rab Shimon ben Elazar. Rab Shimon ben Elazar is Moida, and this is our brisa that we had. This is a brisa, sorry. The Kalim Chadashim, if they're new Kalim, but Shesav Asan Ha'ayin, that the person who owns it was able to get his eyes on them and focus and record and understand it, so that he now will recognize it even without a simon. Over there, Reb Shimon is Moida, even though it's a new Keli, you'd still give it back to him b'tzviyas hayin. Ve'elu hen kelim chadashim shaloi savas ayin. What type of new kelim would we typically say a person doesn't etch into his memory, and therefore she'eino chayav lahachriz, and therefore someone who finds them would not have to call them out? Kigoyin bade machtin, which Rashi tells us are some type of bracket that you would hang needles on. Rashi says, "L'kamei mefarish bade machtin shetoilen b'machtin." It's something that you would hang needles on. V'tzinoiriyos, Rashi says, are small forks that they used to use when they were processing gold. Umachroizos shel kardumois, and a string of axes. So I guess there used to be a string that they used to use to hang axes on, which they would be able to carry multiple axes with that one string. So these are all kelim chadashim shaloi savas ayin. A person would normally not focus and memorize the features of that particular item, and therefore we'll assume that if it's lost, you can keep it. Kol elu sha'abru, all of these that we said, emosai mutarin. In other words, the items that we're saying that a person typically is not savas ayin, he typically doesn't focus on them and record in his mind exactly what it looks like, so that now he was able to recognize them. So all of these kelim that have no siman, the only time we say you can keep it is bisman shemotz on echad echad, if you found one. However, avomot on shnayim, what if you found two badim? You found two machroizos, chayiv lahachris. Then you would be mechuyev to call it out, because there obviously is a siman. What is that simon? Rashi says the minion have a simon. What would be the simon? The simon is the person who would be claiming it would tell you how many you found. Zoktamar, my bade. What are these badim that we're talking about? Zoktamar shuchi. They're defined as shuchi. Rashi says, anofim shal ilan, like the branches of a tree. My kari le badi. Why are they called badi if they're really branches of a tree? Zoktamar, davar de tolu b'midi bad kari le. Whenever you have an object that other things hang on it, that's referred to as a bad. Just like we learned in a brisa, Hosam, which is in Sukkah, when we're talking about, I believe, a hadas, Allah echad bevad echad, one leaf in one bad, which means where it connects to the stem. So that's the item that the leaf connects to. As Rashi says, Sukkah, Gabi Arava, so it's not a hadas, it's an Arava. Shenashru miktes aleh, some of its leaves fell off. V'nishtayru ba shloisha alan lachin, but they're still remaining on the Arava 3 moist leaves. V'ikod amri afilu ala echad bevad echad kshera, and there's one shita in the Mishnah that says even if there's only one leaf left in one connection point, that is still a kosher Arava. So you see, bad refers to the connection point where the leaf connects to the stem. When we want to talk about a rack, if you hang needles on or little forks on, it's called a bud. And Reb Shimon Elazar also said, "Hamatzal min ari." If someone sees that there's a lion with a certain object, and he was able to get this object away from the ari, umina doiver, from a bear, umina nomer. A nomer, I believe, is a leopard. Okay, umina bardalis, and from what is a bardalis? A hyena. Okay, or umin zutoy shal yam, or if it was sucked away by the tide, umishlulusai shal nar, or if it got sucked up into Rapshit's Creek, or hamoiti bisratya uflatya gadoila, you find something in a big, busy, open area, or any place where there are masses there, where it would be impossible to locate it. In all those cases, the finder is the keeper, and the loser is the weeper. Why? In all these cases, once an object finds itself in such a position, the owner will surely be miyayish and assume he's never going to get it back, and therefore, if you find it, you're allowed to keep it. And Rashi makes it very clear that it's speaking about filu davar sheyesh by siman. Even if it has a siman, where under normal circumstances a person wouldn't be miyayish because he has a siman with which to retrieve it, but if it's found in any one of these situations, he'll be miyayish nevertheless. So now we're going to focus a little bit about when you find something, because this is not necessarily referring to a siman or asl nedaris, and that's why someone who finds it's allowed to keep it, even if it's not asl nedaris, even if it's not in the Rosh Hashanah, but there's a lot of people there, he's miyayish because he's going to assume that there's somebody who's going to take it, even though he could have given it back with a siman. And now the Gemara drills down. We're going to have a 5-point shaila. Ibaylahu. The Gemara declares a shaila. Kika Amar Reb Shimon ben Elazar. When Reb Shimon ben Elazar said that if you find something, b'makom sharab matzuyin sham, you can assume that surely the bailim are miyayish because he feels he's never going to get it back. Is that only b'roiv kanainim? If you lose it in a place where it's mostly goyim, there he's concerned that he wouldn't give it back. But maybe a b'roiv Yisrael, he'll assume if he's going to find it, he's going to try to get it back to me. So that's shaila number 1. Reb Shimon ben Elazar wants to know, is it not Reb Shimon ben Elazar? We want to know, Reb Shimon ben Elazar who taught us this halacha, that when you find something, b'makom sharab matzuyin sham, that automatically the person is going to be miyayish. Is that only if it's found in a big goyish city? You find it on a TTC train, chances are it's all going there, it's rave going there, and therefore people assume he'll never get it back. But what if it's in a place where it's all eaten? You lose it on Besmedrish. Would a person be miyayish there as well? Or maybe Shimon Elazar said, even if you find it in a place where it's Roiv Yisrael, a person is still going to be miyayish. That was the first question. So Tosfos right away asks Akasha. We just framed the shaila. Is it only in a place where it's Roiv Kanainim, so that if he drops it, he's going to be miyayish because of probably a guy took it? Or is it even in a place which Rav Yisrael? For Tosfos, what did Reb Shimon ben Elazar say? Why is it that if you find something, the makom sharab ben why are you allowed to keep it? Reb Shimon ben Elazar says very clearly why. Mipnei shabayil misyayishim here, because the balam miyayish. For Tosfos, if you're in a place which Rav Nachri, never mind mipnei shabayil misyayishim. Why don't you say it probably fell from a goy and you're not mechuyev to return the Metzia of a goy? So frek Tosfos in Taimar, imkein ma tzarich tam mipnei shabayil misyayishim. Typically, the yeshlit the mikdanim nofal, the avaruba. If it's roiv goyim, assume it fell from a goy. We know you don't have to return a Metzia of a goy. I'm sorry? No. I mean, like it was a pair of tefillin or something. V'yeshleimar the itzrich, the afilu yedei avadai. Exactly, Duvi's teretz. Even if you could tell from the object that it fell from a yid, nevertheless, the hamafsid misyayish, the person who lost it is miyayish. The oimer, and he'll say the knanim shaklulei, probably going to afilu im Yisrael yimtzem, and even if a yid finds it, lo yachris, he won't call it out. The toilet, the min knanim nafal, the hein ruba. Because he'll assume that it fell from a goy. So this can't be like a parrot film, because everybody would know it fell from a yid. But it's something that for sure, I don't know how he would have known. He knew that this is an object that fell from a yid. I'm not sure how he would know, unless he wrote it. I'm Jewish. It's funny because nowadays things are different. If you lost your tefillin in Kennedy Airport, would you be miyayish? I don't think so, because it's bound to show up on Facebook. I've seen many occasions where someone posts on Facebook, they found something. They found a passport, they found film, and they asked, you know who it is? And within a couple of days, they ended up getting back to him. I once left my hat in LaGuardia Airport in the departure lounge. So you leave your hat there, you're never going to find it. But that's not. I end up getting it back. Why? Because I called the desk and I made mishiga until they found it. I don't know if you remember in the old LaGuardia departure lounges, each flight maybe had like 6 chairs. It wasn't a very big place, the area. And I had the agent at least take the hat, I told him, and put it underneath your desk over there, you know where they work. And then I asked around, and Nussi Werner's Acharon Levracha was flying back to Toronto. I called him, and I said, when you get to the gate, look over there behind the desk. And he brought it back for me. So I'm not sure how Yush works now, but at least in the Gemara's case, it's something where a person would surely be miyach. Yeah, right. There's stories where people lost things and the Chavadim went and turned it over. There were probably Breslevers. If you find an Aved that's not good, if you find a Nananayach Yamaka, you could never assume that the Baal Mimiyayish, because it's ancient Miyash. So Kikam Shimon in Elazar Berev Kedainim. Al Berev Yisrael Lo, you don't feel Berev Yisrael Nami, a person will be Miyayish. Omar, he said his halacha, Im Tim Talamar Fil Berev Yisrael. If you're going to say that the Shimon Elazar had a chiddush, that even by Berev Yisrael, a person's still going to be Miyayish. The question is, why? He gives it back. So Tosfos says, it's possible, not shaykh, but it's possible maybe that there's a yid there who maybe fears nicht of the Adarf. Okay? And if you're going to say that the Shimon Elazar had a chiddush, even by Rav Yisrael, then let me ask you a question. We know the Rabbanan dispute this halacha of Reb Shimon ben Elazar because it's Reb Shimon ben Elazar saying it. The Rabbanan argue. So would the Rabbanan argue by? Do they argue on it or not? I'm sorry. Do they argue b'chlal on this halacha or not? Zok to Gemara, the imtim shalomer pligi, and even if you're going to say they argue by Rav Yisrael, vaday pligi. For sure they argue by Rav Yisrael. They say by Rav Yisrael, a person won't be miyayish. But the question is, by Rav Kananim pligi or loy pligi? Would they be moida to Reb Shimon and Elazar by Rav Kananim that there the person would probably be miyayish or maybe not? Imtim shalomer pligi, and if you're going to say that they argue side by Rav Yisrael and side by Rav Kananim that the person would not be miyayish. I feel of Rav Kananim, a person will not be miyayish even if the Aveda is lost in a place of Rav Kananim. Halacha kamoisay or ain't halacha kamoisay? Is halacha like Reb Shimon ben Elazar that you can be mekel and keep it the Aveda, or maybe not? The imtim salaymer halacha kamoisay. Even if you say we pass like Reb Shimon ben Elazar, maybe dafka b'Rav Kananim, where it's more likely that a person will be miyayish. Or I feel of Rav Yisrael. So let's look at our 5-prong shaila. Shaila number 1. Did Reb Shimon ben Elazar say that a person is miyayish even if it was Rav Yisrael? That's shaila number 1. Shaila number 2 is, do the Rabbanan argue or not? Or do the Rabbanan also agree to Reb Shimon ben Elazar that people are miyayish? Even if you say that they argue, maybe they only argue by Rav Yisrael, and they would say that a person is not miyayish. But maybe by Rav Kanainim, they would agree to Reb Shimon ben Elazar that a person is miyayish. And even if you say that they argue in both places, who do we paskin like? Do we paskin like Reb Shimon ben Elazar or not? And even if you say that we paskin like Reb Shimon ben Elazar, maybe we only paskin like him by Rav Kanainim, because there it's more reasonable to assume someone will be miyayish. But maybe if it was Rav Yisrael, we don't paskin like. So we have a 5-pronged shaila, and now the Gemara is going to attempt to at least clarify one of the shailas. So Zok the Gemara. Tashma, hamoyte mois bevate knesiyos ubevate midrashos. What if you find money in a beis medrash? Ubechol mokom sharabim metzuyin sham. Anywhere where you'd find a rabbim, harei elu shaloi, you're allowed to keep it. Mipnei shabayim misyayish in lehem, because the bayim are miyayish. So let's stop for a brief moment and see what Rashi says. Hamoyte mois, kasol kadaitach. We're making an assumption that what type of money do you find? Tzibur mois, just a pile of money. The katani masliz in chayiv lahakris. If you just found mois mufuzarin, there you don't have to call it out. We assume he dropped it. But if it was in a pile where under normal conditions, if it was in a place where we're not concerned that someone's going to take it, you would have to call it out because that's considered a simon. Here, there's a different reason why you don't have to give it back, because it's Rab Mitzuyim Sham, therefore Arelu Shaloi, Shenishyai Shu Abayim. So that's how we're understanding it. Really, if this was found in a place where it's not Rab Mitzuyim Sham, I would have a simon, but it's only because it was found in this place where the Bailam would be miyayish. So let's think, who would be the author of this price? Man Shamas Lei, the Asal Basaruba. Now this doesn't mean the classic halach in Shas that you go Basaroi. This the Asal Basaruba means who holds that when there's a Makim Sharab Mitzuyin Sham, there's Yush. Who expressed such a halacha mefurish? None other than Reb Shimon ben Elazar. So this brisa is Reb Shimon ben Elazar talking. And where did you find it? You found it in the Beis Medrash. You found it in the Beis Knesset. So you see clearly, Shamat Mina Afilu B'Rav Yisrael Nam. You have a raya from this brisa that we quoted, who must be the author of it must be Reb Shimon ben Elazar, who tells us this halacha about B'Makom Sharab Mitzuyin Sham, and the case of the brisa is a Makom Sharab Mitzuyin Sham, but it's Rabbim of Eden. It's a Beis Medrash. It's a Beis Knesset. So you have a raya, a person will be miyayish even if it's found in the Beis Medrash or Beis Knesset. Zok Gemara Lav Davke Hacha b'Mayaskina b'Mefuzarin. Who said it has a simon? Maybe it's Mois Mefuzarin, and therefore all bets are off. As Rashi says, b'Mefuzarin, and then for Rabbanani. Then it could even be going according to Rabbanon, who holds that a person is not miyayish b'Makom Sheyesham Rabim. But the reason why in this brisa you don't have to give it back, Harei Shaloi, is the Moed b'Mefuzarin, because there's no simon here. It's not Mois Mefuzarin, Harei Shaloi. That's our Mishnah. Correct the Gemara, it doesn't make sense to say speaking b'mefuzarin, because even mefuzarin, my area makim sharab matzuyin sham. Why did the Bryce have to say that a person is miyayish? Because it's rab matzuyin sham. I feel ain't a rab matzuyin sham. Even if it's not a place where there's many people there, it would still be mutter to take because it's something that doesn't have a simon, and that's he's miyayish. We're going to have to say that it's speaking with money that otherwise would have a simon. And there's the reason why over here a person is miyayish. Yes, it says about a basic nesses, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a shul, as Rashi says. Maybe it's a sifas mokim shemiskanchin sham lisyai to lisvayit, which would indicate it's not just a bar. This is like parliament. I wouldn't trust anybody in parliament. That's what they do for a living. They figured out how to steal from citizens, right? So maybe that's where it's something that you're miyayish, right? In parliament, never mind being miyayish on something that you lost. You have to be miyayish on what's inside your own pocket because they're going to rip you off every place you turn. Okay, fine. But the Chnesios does not have a connotation that a dafka means a Yiddish B'Smedish. Maybe it means a government office. But Batim Midrashos, Mai Kalameimar, a B'Smedish is for sure referring to a place where you eat and sit and learn. Goyim don't have it in learning. This is not the Osgood Law School library. It's a B'Smedish. It's Dr. Gemara. You're right. Batim Midrashos Didan, the Yosfu B'Knainim. It's our Batim Midrashos. But our Batim Midrashos, Rashi tells us, are often out of the city. And therefore, and we hire Kanainim as security guards. So the security guard or the cleaner who's going through the Bismedrish during the day when Eden aren't around, they're surely going to pocket whatever it is that they found. So therefore, you don't have a raya that Reb Shimon ben Elazar says, even by Rav Yisrael, a person's miyayish, because in these cases, at certain times, it's Rav Kanainim, and therefore he's miyayish.
It doesn't say because
it means there's a rabbim of goyim.
They think there'd be more guards than people that are actually in the place.
During the day, in this Pesmedrash, there's more goyim than you. No one's around, right? No one's around it. So it's considered, it's a rabbim shum and roiv goyim. So it's not that like here we have one or two cleaners, but I guess in the days where the Pesmedrash was in the field, so going with Fabrenger. There was Fabrenger. Fact Gemara, so now that we're coming to this conclusion, then Batach Nesia is Nami, Didan, the Yasbu Kanainim. We don't have to say it's speaking about Batach Nesia of Goyim. We could say it's Batach Nesia of Eden, but it's speaking during the times where they're empty, where there's a lot of Kanainim. Okay, so at least now we don't have any riot. All we see from here is that Reb Shimon ben Elazar says at least from Makam Sharav Kanainim, a person's miyayish.
This is what hungry from Rav Kanainim.
That's
so. Als dan maar eindig van hebben naar besmetters, was toen dat goyish cleaner, is het een gillige miyayish.
Well, I can only tell you what Rashi says, that if it's a besmedrash that's in the Soda, in a rural area, and goyim hang out there, then he's miyayish. Okay. I don't know if it's a local besmedrash where a guy is working there and pinked sometimes during the day, there's no Yidden there. I don't know if that would qualify as
a job is to clean. Dort is a job to clean. Do as a clean.
I hear, but the Gemara doesn't make that distinction, so I'm not sure. If something found in the Mishpash, we're allowed to keep it. So Tashma, Matzah Aveda. What if you found an Aveda? In Rav Yisrael, Chayv Lachos. Matzah Aveda of Rashi, it's a Mishnah in Seder Taharis, the Ir Yisrael Kanainim Dorimba, in a city where Jews live there, Goyim live there, and you find an Aveda. So Matzah Aveda. In Rav Yisrael, if it's Rav Yisrael, Chayv Lachos, you have to call it out because the assumption is that the Bailim are not miyayish. Of course, it means it has a simon. In Rav Kanainim, but if it's a Rav Kanainim, Eina Chayv Lachos. So once again, Man Shamet Lei, the Amar Aslina Basaruba. Who is the mandam who says that if it's Mokam Sharabim Matsuyin Sham, a person is miyayish? Rab Shimon ben Elazar. So Shamet Mina, you see clearly that distinction. He come Rab Shimon ben Elazar is Dafka B'Rav Kanainim, Ava B'Rav Yisrael. So once again, we have a raya at least to one prong of our 5-prong shaila. Maybe it's going according to the Rabbanon. If it's going according to the Rabbanon, so now you have a riot from here about what the Rabbanon hold. So we could be poshed another prong of the shaila. Tivshav minah, the moidele Rabbanon Rab Shimon Elazar, Rav Kanainim. Then if this is the Rabbanon talking, that means the Rabbanon agreed that by Rav Kanainim a person's miyayish, and they're only arguing by Rav Yisrael. So you deflected from it being a riot to one shaila by making it into a riot to a different shaila. So at least we have a riot. So then we might as well go back to our original assumption that this price is going according to Reb Shimon ben Elazar, and really you don't have a riot from here that by Rav Yisrael a person is not miyayish. And I'll make an argument that afilu b'Rav Yisrael nami. So why in the Brisa why in the Brisa in Tahiris does the Brisa say that a person is not miyayish by Rav Yisrael? It wasn't a Veda found out in the open. It was an Veda that was hidden. Zokt Rashi, the Kivan the Tamnu, since it's hidden, lava Veda. Clearly, someone put it there and hid it there, and therefore it's not an Veda. So even though it's a very busy place, he snuck it away into a nook that it won't be found. Hilchach b'Rav Yisrael Yachris. Therefore, if it's the case of Rav Yisrael, we'll assume that he was not miyayish. Break the Gemara, I don't understand. Even Tamun, Maya Vidite Gabe. If it was taka hidden away, the person should never have taken it in the first place. Because we learned a Mishnah that if you know that someone snuck something away, you're not allowed to take it and try to find the owner. Leave it where it is. But nan, Matza Kliba Ashba. If you found the Keli in the Ashba, Mechusa, if it's covered over, meaning clearly someone placed it there, that he would return later and retrieve it, Lo Yigaboy. Don't touch it. Because then you're not going to know who it belongs to, and how are you going to give it back? Better just leave it right where it is, and therefore it'll best be found by the original owner when he comes back to get it. Megula, if it's uncovered and it's in danger of being found, then noitel machrish because you're helping the bailam. But if it's still covered up, you're not helping the bailam by taking it. So he shouldn't have taken it in the first place. Zok to Gemara, Kito Amar Papa. Rav Papa wanted to say that it's speaking by ashba she'eina sui lefanos. There are certain ashbas that are cleaned regularly. If you find something there, clearly someone's not putting there for safekeeping because it's all going to be thrown out and he'll lose it. So clearly, if a person hid it there, he put it into an ashba where it was assumed that it would be safe there for a while. And what happened was suddenly the owner decided that he's cleaning it out suddenly. So someone now has an item that's in peril because it was put there under the assumption that it would be able to stay there for a considerable amount of time until he'd go get it. And suddenly that blew up. So that's why you're allowed to take it and you're allowed to find its owner. Hachanami, we can say here as well, and suddenly someone decides to clean it out and he finds there a keli, what should he do with it? So Rashi, from 1 minute to the next, he said, you know what? Atkan, I'm clearing this ashba out. Right? This is similar to when Akiva suddenly decides to clean out the office or the office down here, the office in front. Suddenly, all the things that someone hid there for the last 20 years are going to get thrown out. And therefore, if you did this and you found in your ashba items that people hid there, therefore, oyitlenu, oyihayev, either it's going to be hefker or you can take it. It wasn't something that was normally going to be cleaned out.
The ashba belongs to the guy who found it.
I believe so. Then anyone who placed it there is literally throwing it out. He should have been concerned that it might get cleaned out. So that's what I'm assuming. He decided he's cleaning it up. I don't think he's going to go to the city transportation and decide to clean it up. It must be that he had a place that people threw stuff there. I'm not sure if it's Rosh Hashanah, why would someone put his stuff into Rosh Hashanah? That I'm not sure.
The government that decides for
I'm sorry?
the government that decides for business.
I hear it. So let's have a look at Toshus, because Toshus gets a little bit into the technical details of what happened. B'tomen, Zok Toshus, v'loy boy look me, change Rab Matsuin Shah. The Gemara could have just said that the Brisa, the Mishnah there entire is speaking in a case where it's not Rab Matsuin Shah. So then all bets are off. and then it's not like it. Why didn't the Gemara want to spell it out that way? Since the Mishnah makes that distinction, mashma if looking at the statistics between how many Yidden and how many Goyim live in the city, the only way that will impact our Shiloh over here is if it's found in a place that's exposed to all the people of the city. The if you found it in a place where not so many people frequent, the only whether or not Roy Va'ir is Yisrael or Roy Va'ir is a Goy, if it's found in a place that's exposed to Roy Va'ir. It's a simple kasha. Lama Yiga Boy. If it's Taman, why should he touch it? If it's because he wants to clean it out, you find it in a place, you find it in an ashba. Why would you pick it up at all? As long as it's there, safe. And you're afraid that someone's going to clean it out, so don't touch it. The guy who cleans it out is going to encounter it, so he'll call it out. Why would you feel the need to now pull it out and call it out? The guy who cleans it's going to find it anyway, and he will call it out. Either the Shema Yichnai, maybe it's going to be a goy, and he won't. So I better rescue it earlier. Maybe he's not going to use a toothpick to go through the garbage. He's going to use a backhoe, and he's likely not going to find a tiny little thing. Why should you even call it out for yourself? Why can't you just keep it? The Bailam are not going to find it. The ashra will get cleaned out. They'll surely be miyayish. Why? Because they'll assume that someone inappropriate took it. Even if it's Rav Yisrael. The Hainu Taima, the Rab Shimon, the Shari Rav Yisrael. Right? Rab Shimon is mated by Rav Yisrael because he's afraid maybe a person's afraid maybe it was picked up by somebody who won't return it. Even if that would happen, when you find the Metzia in the Ashba, at that point, the owner doesn't know. The owner thinks that it's safe. Therefore, the Bashar Shaloi Chadayin Layada, and we pass like a by the Yish Lamidas Layavish. But Rav Kedainim have a Shaloi. Why by Rav Kedainim could you keep it? The Talinon, the Kenainim hit Minua Davaruba. We assume that it was a guy who hit it. And therefore, we don't have to be worried that he hit it. Okay? So Zok to Gemara, that's the case here. So therefore, you don't have any raya at all to the Shiloh of Reb Shimon and Elazar, because this is speaking in the case where a person placed it there and he was not miyayish, and suddenly there's a cleanup, and that is why if it's Rav Yisrael, you have to give it back. Zok to Gemara, v'boy yisema, or maybe I can deflect the brisa in a different way, and I'll say lo'elam rabbanon. It's really going according to the Rabbanon, Zok Rashi, Ubesha'ena Taman. And you don't have to make the Ukimta like we made, that is speaking where it was hidden. Because the Brisa just says you found. The Gemara makes it Ukimta, it's speaking where it was hidden and it was safe. But rather, no, it's wide open. You have a raya that your Rabbanon hold that by Rav Kanainim, I'm going to be Miyayish, and they only argue by Rav Yisrael. No Zok Rashi, the moidele b'roiv k'nainim. Don't bring a raya from here that in the case of roiv k'nainim, the rabbanon are moida that the loser is going to be miyayish, because mika tani hein shaloi. It doesn't say in the Bryce in the Mishnah that you have a right to keep it. Einoi chayiv lahakvish katani. It says you don't have to call it out, but it doesn't mean you can keep it. It means you don't have to call it out because you'll never find something. But v'yoniach, he's going to have. You should hold on to it. The Yosy Yisrael, the Yoyiv Besimna V'Shakal. And if a Yisrael comes and gives the Siman, then he'll take it. So let's have a look at the Lashon, a Mishnah itself. It says in the Mishnah, Matav Aveda, Im Rav Yisrael Chayv L'Achris, Im Rav Kedanim Ein Chayv L'Achris. It never says if it's Rav Kedanim you're allowed to keep it. It just means you don't call it out. Zok Rashi, so how does it work? Mikatani Ein Chayv L'Achris, Mikatani Hareyu Shaloi, Ein Chayv L'Achris Katani. They keep in the Ruba, Kanainim, Maybe you lost the knainim. Therefore, you don't have to call it out because you're not muchayev to return the aveda of a goy. But the shaloi nami lo have. You can't keep it. The loy azli rabbanon basaru b'mamana. You don't have to call it out because you can go basaroi that you don't have a chiv to actively seek its owner, but it still might belong to a Jew, and therefore you're allowed to hold on to it. So we discussed all the way at the beginning of this parak, are the two mitzvahs intertwined? Is there a halacha that if it's einay chayiv lahachris, automatically you get to keep it? Here the Gemara is clearly suggesting that just because you don't have a chiva shava, it doesn't mean that you get to keep it. Because here's a case where the chiva shava is assessed based on the roiv. Roiv goyim, there's no chiva shava. But keep it, mechilesh, you're allowed to keep it. Even if there's a miyut, you're not allowed to take it because it might belong to a nida.
Until someone comes.
He's considered a shemer aveda, yeah. Tashma, the Gemara discusses how much is a person responsible to hold on to something. And that's what we're about to discuss. Tashma, Dam Rabasi said, Matzah chavis yayin be'ir sharuba knai. You found a jug of wine in a place where it's roiv goyim, muterish mishum Metzia. You can assume it's mutter because, like we're saying, be'ir sharuba knaim, the Bible of miyayish. But vasur bana, but it's also bana because it might be yayin nesach. So the Gemara is going to ask. So exactly why is he so excited that it's mutter? What do you mean mutter? If you touch a bana, you can't have any enough of it anyway. Boy Yisrael v'nasam a simon. What if Yisrael came and gave me a simon, which now proved that the jug of wine was his? So now muteris b'shtia l'moitza. The person who finds it is allowed to drink it. So Zok Rashi, Boy Yisrael v'nasam simon, yotzes misavik yain knainim, and therefore umuteris b'shtia l'moitza. Why? The kivin the ruba knainim nishaishu abaylam. So even if a guy tells you it's mine and I have a simon, you don't have to give it back to him. Because the assumption is that he was miyayish, even though there was a simon. But you can say, thank you very much for giving me the simon. Now at least I can use it. Zok to Gemara, Kamam, Kreb Shimon ben Elazar. So Kaman, Kreb Shimon ben Elazar. Who is this consistent with? This is consistent with Shimon ben Elazar because he's the one who said that here, Shuva Knainim, the Makam Sharab Matsuyin Sham, someone is going to be miyayish. Shemamina. So then from here you have a raya. Ki Amar Rab Shimon ben Elazar. Where did Rab Shimon ben Elazar say halacha? That's B'roiv Knainim, like it says in the Brisa, Be'ir Sharuba Knainim. Aval B'roiv Yisrael Loi. So we're posted the very first shaila. Zaktamar no. Lo Olam Emelach Rab Shimon ben Elazar. Afilu B'roiv Yisrael Nami Ka'amar, that a person would be miyayish. But who said this halacha over here? The Amar Ravasi. So we weren't bringing a raya from a Mishnah here. We were bringing a raya from what Ravasi said. Maybe Rav Asi sover lakavasei bechada. Maybe Rav Asi holds that a person is miyayish if he loses something b'makom sheroiv kenainim, but upolagalei bechada. Although Rav Shimon ben Elazar holds even b'makom sheroiv Yisrael a person will be miyayish, Rav Asi holds no, only b'makom sheroiv kenainim. In fact, the more of v'chimei achar dasir bano. You just said that be'ir sharuba knainim. It's also about no. Could you have to sharuba fell from a goy and it's ayin nesach muterish b'shum Metzia l'mayilchasa? Exactly what benefit is there to the finder? Ravashi l'kinkana. Yes, you got to spill out the wine, but the jug you can keep, and the jug has value. I'm not sure why there's not a problem of blias, right? We had the whole thing with sherry casks that it's ayin nesach. It's in the cask. But here it says that you're not worried about it. So I'm not sure. I don't know the Yoredei component. What does he say? Say it again. Oh, yeah, it's kasher. Dubi says maybe he's going to use it for something else. He can use it to store other things. Very smart. Yeah, okay. Very good. Hahu Gavra, the Ashkech Arba Zuzi. Someone found 4 zuz. The Tzaira Besadina. They were wrapped in a shmata. Vishadu b'nahar biran, and they were in Nahar Biran. Rashi mushlachim b'nahar biran. They were found at the bottom of the river. He was going fishing, and he picked up a heavy fish, but wasn't fighting. And when he reeled it in, he saw that he had a shmata with dinarim in it. Also lakamei, the Reb Yehuda, and now he wanted to know, may he keep it? And he asked this shaila to Reb Yehuda. Amalei, Reb Yehuda told him, no problem. Zil achris. Unfortunately, you can't keep it. You have to announce it, meaning it's an Aveda, and we're going to assume the Bailam were not Miyayish. Frag the Gemara about Zuta Shal Yamu. This is in a river. So if it's in a river, we learned that a person is Miyayish. So Gemara, no. Shining the Harbirin, and the Harbirin is not like any other river. This is not the river in eruptions. This is a different river. Even the Maskell, there's a lot of debris and junk in it. And therefore, nothing that falls in will be swept away. It will be obstructed from flowing away from the debris that's in the river. Therefore, loy miyayish. As Rashi, the Miskal, yesh b'mechshaylim, avonim, there's stones there, and also ustimas geder shayis ladogim. They would build these traps in the river. We learned about it. They put some vertical reeds there, and then they would put things across so it wouldn't let fish get through. That's how they would catch fish. Well, that same trap would catch this thing as well. And therefore, v'loy miyayish. Why? Savar, the owner will figure, lo yuchal anar lo licham chutz l'machshaylim. The river will not be able to get it past. The flowing river will not get my Aveda past these obstructions. On a regular basis, they would dive down there and they would clean it out. And to clean it out, and then dig it out to restore the flow of the river. And therefore, the person who loses something in that particular river, so they would close the river off, they would block it, let it dry out, go in there and clean it, and then let it flow again. So he's confident that it would get found. But even if it would get found, it would be found likely by a goy. So Viter, why don't you say that the Bailam are Vadim Yayish? So you have a raya that we don't pass like Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, even if it's Rav Knainim. So you see Rabbi Yehuda is paskening da like Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, and even if it's Rav Knainim, a person is not miyayish. So Gemara, no. Shining the Harbirin, the Yisrael Sachrele. You know who's in charge of the public works of that city? Who does this type of work? It's all Yidden in that department. The Yisrael correlate. The Yisrael are the one who shuts the river off or diverts the river. They're the ones who clean it out. So therefore, since I know it's going to be a Yid there, given the Yisrael Sachrele, Amar mi Yisrael Nafal. It must be a Chassidish city because in Elizabeth city they're not going to be digging out rivers, right? V'chivin the Yisrael korele le miyayish, and therefore he won't be miyayish. If you have a shokol va'osel basar demar shmuel v'shukah devedisa. This is a beautiful Gemara because you see that every move that these Amayroim made, they were learning from their Rebbe. So he's walking with his Rebbe in the shuk where they sold daisa, where they sold crushed grain that they used to use for porridge. Amar Lei, so he asked the Rebbe, Matzakan Arniki Mahu. What would be if I found over here an Arniki? Is this a Makam Rabbim? Can I be makeable Makam Rabbim? What would be the Allah? Amar Lei, he told them, Harei Elishallah, you can keep it. Because I guess it's a Makam Sharabim Mitzuin Sham. Okay. Boy Yisrael. Rashi says the Vedaisa Shemakam Shemachitim. Okay. What if after I picked it up, you told me I'm allowed to keep it? Now a Yisrael comes and gives a simon. No, then you got to give it to him. So he asked his Rebbe, that's a stira. If you're telling me I'm allowed to keep it, it means you're not choshish that it's a Mokim Yisrael, and you're telling me the guy was miyayish. But now you're telling me if a Yid comes, I have to give it back. If we assume that the owner was miyayish, why would I have to give it back? Even with a simon, right? We learned earlier with the wine, if a Yid comes and gives a simon, you could still keep it because he was miyayish, but it just proved that it was not yayin of Yisrael. No. So Amalei lefnim mishur sadin. His Rebbe said, yeah, meikar, then you can keep it. But lefnim mishur, you know it belongs to the guy, give it back to the guy.
This lucha is this?
That's right. Like the story with the father of Shmuel, Ashkechani Chamri b'midbara. He found donkeys in a midbar, and he returned it. He gave it back. Rashi says that he somehow knew when he found it that it was already 12 months since the owner had lost it. Clearly he was miyayish, yet lifnim mishur sadin, he still gave it back. Lifnim mishur sadin.
12 months.
I don't know if it's an official amount, but after 12 months, a guy didn't find his chamorim, he's going to be miyayish. Tosfos actually doesn't like Rashi's pshat, and Tosfos says the halach is because Duva, you asked earlier, like how long do I have to hold on to something, right? So Zok Tosfos Pirish Hein atzman hichser alpha gav de la yitzarch litin rak the man. He didn't find them after they were lost for 12 months. He found them right away. And if he found them right away, the Bailam are not Mayayish, and he's Mechuyev to hold on to them. But how long are you Mechuyev to hold on to donkeys if you find them? Only 12 months, the loch is. So really, Avagab lo yitzarch litin rak the man, and he had a right to sell them and just put cash in his drawer and hold on to the cash on behalf of the owner when the owner eventually comes to claim it. Like we're going to learn soon, called if it's something that it could produce, even though it eats, but it produces at least what it eats, so therefore it's not diminishing in value. No, only if it's oichel, it's ois of oichel. If it's only if it produces. So whatever it's going to cost him to sustain, he can get work out of it. Like a sheep, you can't work. A sheep doesn't do any work. A chicken doesn't do any work. That you ought to sell right away. Sell right away. And that's what we're going to learn. We're going to learn that soon. Let's call them ois of oichel metabel bayud bis chodesh. You can't veilach some or sham domain manichat. You could just put money away. So that's what it means. Even though he could have sold it, he still gave it back, and he continued to hold on to it. Alva Rashi Pirish shemotzon achar yus bis chodesh shenavdu. He only found them after they were already lost for 12 months. Kasha the binolan. Who said that 12 months automatically means the guy was miyayish? Maybe the guy will never be miyayish, even if it's already 12 months since they're lost. How is the guy going to know how long it was lost for? He won't know, so he's assuming he's going to get it back. The teretz is it was lefnim mishur sedin. Zog to Gemara weiter. It's so funny. The Gemara is saying, "What's the big kasha? There are people out there who do lefnim mishur sedin." Like on having a raya with chvot gemaited, maybe it's also lefnim mishur sedin. But you see, Avu the Shmuel also did lefnim mishur sedin. So emegochin. I hear. Rava v'shokol v'ozol basredi Rab Nachman v'shukah de Galdoi. What did they do in the shukah de Galdoi? Rashi says they made straps. They processed and shaped leather. Or maybe it was in the Besmedrash. It was in a place where the Rabbanim hang out. Amalei matzakan arniki mahu. What if I found an arniki over here? Amalei reil shaloi. The Bailam Yayish. Boy Yisrael v'nosam v'simin mahu. Amalei reil shaloi. You could still keep it. Oh, he's the guy to ask. The next time when you want to ask the shaila, you ask the shaila to Rab Nachman. In fact, the more of I v'aloi ovid v'tzavach. The guy is screaming, it's mine, it's mine. How could you tell me it's mine? She's screaming, it's mine. So Rab Nachman said, too bad. It's not going to do anything. It's like when you push the elevator button, even though it's lit up already, it's not going to make the elevator come any sooner. Someone told me when it comes to shidduchim, making too much shtadlis is like pushing the button in the elevator again and again. It might make you feel good, but it's not going to make the elevator come any sooner. That's right. That's right. Ahud Yoy, there was an eagle. I think the Yoy is an eagle or a vulture. Right? It was a vulture. There was a vulture. The shokal bisra b'shukah. It scooped up meat in the kosher meat. V'shadya b'tzinaisa the vei bar Marion. It dumped it in the trees that belong to Bar Marion. Also, so they asked Abaye, could they take the meat? Amalei, the petitioner was told, Zil shekoil nafshach, you can keep it. So maybe the person would not have been miyayish. Shemas we know, you see from here, Allah ben Elazar afilu b'roiv Yisrael. Maybe we could bring a ride that Abaye holds that even Makom Shroiv Yisrael, a person is miyayish. That we know, shiny diyoy, a vulture scooping up meat, the chezuta shel yam dami. There, a person's never going to see that again. That's considered zuta shel yam, and automatically that's a yush. We say automatically. The Torah says it's not a shetoivit mimena. What about the fact? Forget the choshen mishpat shaila. It's the kezuda shoyam, but the yardei shaila. It's bosher shenas alam ayin. How do you notice the same kosher meat? Maybe the vulture dropped that meat to pick up treven meat. Speaking where I saw the vulture pick up the kosher meat, I saw him fly to the tree, and I saw him drop it there. There, it's not bosher shenas alam ayin. Rab Chanina matakadish shachit. Rab Chanina found a geshacht and a goat between Tveria and Tzipuri, between the city of Tveria and Tzipuri. Okay, v'hitireyu loy, and he was mater. You know, the Bezdin told Reb Chanina, you can eat it. You can keep it and you can eat it. Amar Abami hitirei eloi mishum Metzia al tchoshim mishpet. We don't have to be worried it belongs to somebody. Reb Shimon ben Elazar, because Reb Shimon ben Elazar said that it's b'makom mishrab mitzuyin sham, and therefore the person will be miyayish. And we'll soon see this is even Beruv Yisrael. And mishum shchita, we're not worried that it wasn't geshachtim properly. Krab Chanina, Krab Chananya, but no Rabbi Yosy clearly. The Tanya, Harisha Abdullah Gediya B'Tanagoylov. What happens if you lost your Gediya and your Tanagoyl? Then you found them, they were geshachtim. So the question is, can you assume they were shackled by a kosher or shaychet or not? Rabbi Yehuda you cannot eat it. But Rabbi Chananya, but no Rabbi Yosy clearly matir. He is matir, and he holds you can assume that it was shechted properly. Okay, Zog to Gemara, Ami Rabbi, near in Diver Rabbi Yehuda, Kishamatim Ba'ashba, and the Mefarshim explained it's probably not even the machlokes. When did Rabbi Yehuda say that the meat that you find you're not allowed to eat if you found it in the ashba, and therefore you assume that it was treif, and that's why they threw it away? But the Rabbi Chanani B'Dosh Rabbi Shaglili is Kishamatim B'Bayis. If you found them in a house, in a place where it wasn't thrown away, it would indicate that it was probably shechted properly. So from the fact that Reb Chananya was matir this, as far as saying that it's kosher, it must be Ruvi Yisrael Nanu. Must be Rav Yisrael. Because if it's Rav Goyim, who said even a Jew shechted it? So right off the bat, that proves that this case was Rav Yisrael. And he also was matir Mishum Metzia. It must be Shemas Mino Halacha Reb Shimon ben Elazar Afilu B'Rav Yisrael. So that's a conclusion that the Gemara makes. Shimon ben Elazar is matir. Even by Rav Yisrael, a person will be miyayish. Amar Rava, Rav K'dainim. What if Rav of the city were goyim, but Rav Tafchi Yisrael, but Rav of the butchers are yidden? So therefore, you can assume that even in the place of Rav K'dainim, it was still shechted properly, and therefore you don't have a raya that in the case of Rav Yisrael, that Rav Shimon ben Elazar holds a person's miyayish. Maybe this was the case of Rav K'dainim. How could you be matter? You could be matter because we can assume that whoever was metabel with the meat was a kosher rishayich. Rabbi Ashkach pregios schutos. Pregios are little birds. Rashi says pregios are birds. Where is Rashi? The small pigeons. Geschachten bein tferiel tzipuri, again on this route. Also the kamed Rabasi, Amrila the kamed Rabbi Yochanan, Amrila bein midrasha. So either he went to Rabasi or to Rabbi Yochanan, or in the Besmedrash he asked the Shaila that I'll rab him there. They told him Zil Shekoil and Namshach can keep it. Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha Ashkach Kibura the Osli Bey Azluye. What he found was he found yarn. He found some type of yarn that would typically be used by trappers to make nets out of. So he found the raw materials of which they make nets, and he wanted to know could he keep it. You can keep it because you can assume he was miyayish. Again, we don't have a raya if this place was mokum rabbi mitzuyin sham yidin or goyim, so we still remain with our shaila. Does Reb Shimon ben Elazar matter even Rav Yisrael? Okay, we will stop here. Tomorrow we're going to learn on Zoom because I won't be here in person. So tomorrow we will learn on Zoom. Leaving at 10 o'clock this morning.